And when you look at their abilities that they were moving and advancing on to get a nuclear weapon, what would they have done with that when they are chanting death to America? Take them at their word, because they have killed hundreds of American troops over the last few decades, and they were continuing to do that. This isn't some new threat. It's been an ongoing threat, but the threat was getting more imminent.
Netanyahu, for over 30 years now, has been saying they are imminently going to get a nuclear weapon. A decade ago, he was saying they're weeks or months away. Anthony Blinken, Biden's Secretary of State, said they are weeks away. So for decades, they've been apparently weeks away. So how do you expect Americans to believe now that this was actually the time when they were about to get it and we struck at the perfect moment?
I don't speak for other countries, but if you listen to what President Trump has talked about, our intelligence has shown that Iran had become very close to being able to deliver nuclear capabilities. And after Midnight Hammer, they still were pursuing nuclear ambitions to go and kill them and do harm to Americans. And they were making it clear. Just listen to what Iran was saying. They were telling you what they wanted to do. And again, these are the same people that were chanting death to America, because that is what they wanted to do with nuclear weapons. And that's why President Trump has made it clear you cannot have a world where Iran has a nuclear weapon, because yes, they're a threat to a lot of countries, especially in the Middle East region, but they're a direct threat to America, and they've killed Americans for decades, and they had no intention to stop. Even with diplomatic means, they had no intention of rolling back those plans. So President Trump is carrying out a very important mission that's making America safer, and we're praying for the safety and true effectiveness of this mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leader.
I just wanted to say briefly that we had a full house tonight. I believe this is I think the third or fourth briefing that I've been to. It was Gang of 8, then we did Gang of 20, and now the full house was there. Many people attended. There were good questions. There was good exchange of information, and I was grateful for the briefers of giving yet another valuable amount of time to come and talk with the House. They made clear, and they've been very consistent from the beginning, that the objective, the mission here, the rationale for it is very clear and very simple. You've heard it articulated over and over and over from the President of the United States, from the Secretary of State, from the Secretary of War, myself, and many others who have said this over and over. I'm not sure why there are lingering questions about this. This is really a very simple matter. It's about the building of ballistic missiles. That's what Iran was engaged in. And they were doing it at a speed and at a scale that was exceeding the ability of our regional allies to respond appropriately. This created an imminent and serious threat. It also gave them cover to continue with their nuclear ambitions. As you know, we tried very hard to negotiate with them about that nuclear enrichment of uranium. We tried to talk with them about their continuing to fund their proxies, all the terrorist organizations that have wreaked havoc and killed Americans and American citizens. And the buildup of their missiles was so important and so serious that the President of the United States, this President, thought that it was a great enough threat that we needed to act. We had a narrow and unique opportunity, a window of opportunity to act, and if that window had passed, it would have been much more difficult for us to achieve the mission. The mission is very simple. It's twofold. We take out their ability to launch ballistic missiles and to produce ballistic missiles, and we downgrade their Navy. That's it. That's what we're doing. It's short in scope. It does not violate the law in any way. It was explained here very well. I'm a constitutional law attorney, used to litigate these questions. We had counsel from the DOJ here tonight who said very well, very clearly, fell just short of citing the specific case law, but explained that this has been the tradition for decades. The President is well within his constitutional authority to do what he has done, and it is entirely consistent with a history of former presidents for at least 4 decades. There's no question about this. The Democrats never had any question about it when Democrat presidents were using this authority. When you look at the analysis of the War Powers Act and the law that applies and the powers that are given to the Commander-in-Chief under Article 2 of the Constitution, President Trump has done exactly what he should do. He is squarely within the law. He used his discretion and his authority and the intelligence that he had, exquisite as it was, as is demonstrated by its effectiveness, and he did what he should have done as a Commander-in-Chief. The idea that a few colleagues here would try to move a War Powers motion and resolution to the floor right now is dangerous. imagine a scenario where Congress would vote to tell the commander-in-chief that he was no longer allowed to complete this mission. That would be a very dangerous thing. You see that Iran is firing almost seemingly indiscriminately at targets. They're trying to intimidate America. They're trying to test our resolve. And the idea that there's some members of this legislative body that would play along with that plays right into the hands of the enemy. And I think it's shameful. I do believe we have the votes to defeat it. I certainly hope we do, because we have lots of troops, service members, in harm's way right now, and the balance of this thing is hanging there. It's been very effective thus far. It needs to be completed. We don't need Congress getting in the way of that. Yes, ma'am.
Based on what you heard.
Thank you so much. Is there any indication of plans? Representative Scalise said he heard one. Democrats say they're not hearing one. What happens when the war ends? What does that look like, and then what does the day after look like?
Look, no one can yet determine with any degree of certainty how this will turn out. We have taken out what appears to be top few layers of leaders and potential leaders who would take over there. It is time for the people of Iran to step up and seize this moment of opportunity for them, the one that they have long awaited, to have freedom there. We're encouraging that. We're hopeful for that. I think our NATO allies and our other allies around the world are watching with great anticipation and hope. I suspect that the entire world will reach out a hand of encouragement and assistance as is needed to help them. We have no ability to get into the nation-building business. We don't do that. We're not the world's policemen. America has enough trouble of our own. But I think this is a great development for the people there to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and seize this moment of opportunity. We're certainly hopeful and prayerful that they will, and that no other innocent people are killed. Iran, by some estimates, murdered tens of thousands of their own citizens just within the last several weeks. Those people are now deceased. They do not have the ability to do that. There's still dangerous folks there, but there's more good people. There's more people who desire to have freedom and liberty, and there are terrorists and tyrants in the world. I'm grateful for that. This is their moment to step up, and I hope they will. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, based on what you heard.
Nonetheless, just
Anyone interested in hearing from the PhD physicist here?
why not?
Okay.
What are you most
I'm
concerned?
Congressman Bill Foster. I'm the PhD physicist in Congress.
As the PhD physicist, what are you most concerned
Well,
about?
the same thing I was concerned about after the strikes of last summer. That the only question here, if you're worried about Iranians' ability to put together a nuclear weapon on a short time scale, is where is their stockpile of 60% enriched uranium. We have heard that they never had a plan, not last summer and not now, to destroy that, to seize it, or to put it under international inspection. And until that happens, Iran will be very, very close to making, as many, in a non-classified situation, many observers have pointed out, Iran can use that material to make a handful of Hiroshima-style nuclear devices. Not the sort you can put on a missile, but the sort you can deliver by a number of other ways, and are very hard to stop. So I was very disappointed that we did not see a plan to put that material under control or destroy it.
Thank you.
I'll start off by just saying this. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. There's no plans. What happens afterwards? There's no plans. What was planned to get Americans out of the way that are still stuck there? There's no plan. We have not learned the lessons of the past. What we see continuing here is, number one, we had 1 hour for members of Congress to ask questions, when all they have ever had was 2 meetings with the Gang of 8 and 1 meeting with the Gang of 12 or 18 or whatever it was. That's it. 1 hour that they wanted to cut short and tell members to ask a question in 1 minute. No hearings. In the Foreign Affairs Committee, I've asked the chairman of the committee over and over again, can you bring administration officials in? None. no citing and no one allowed to talk to Stephen Witkoff or Jared Kushner to ask them about the negotiations that were supposed to be taking place. In fact, it seems as though this was pre-planned all along, because when you hear Prime Minister Netanyahu says this has been planned months ago. And then when you hear time after time, meeting after meeting, it switches on why the war started when it started. Because there was clearly no imminent threat to the United States of America. So here we are again, without answers. Here we are again, without complete transparency. Here we are again, trying to go around Congress, which is why tomorrow's vote on War Powers resolution is tremendously important, because we don't have a king, and we're not a parliament. We're the Congress that stated that only the Congress can declare war. And everyone in the room and other places says this is a war. You know, initially one point they were saying this was not a war, so you can get around the war powers. Well, the president says it's a war. The secretaries are saying it's a war. Everyone is saying it is a war. They called what took place on the 12-day war. Come to Congress, answer our questions, and put the case to the American people. Convince and let the American people know what took place and why. I've been here a long time. I was here in 2003. At least George W. Bush. Colin Powell went before the committee. He went before the UN. George Bush went before all of the people of the United States over and over and over again, trying to convince them that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. At that time, I looked, because I had access, truth of the matter is there was times I could just call somebody in the administration. They didn't call me down to the White House. They came to my office to try to convince me on what it was. I did not see a nexus. They did the same thing with Afghanistan. And this time they convinced me that there was a connection to 9/11. This administration, the Trump administration, is doing everything that they can not to tell the American people the real reason why it was absolutely necessary to go to war when they went to war.
What do you think the real reason is, Congressman? What do you think the real reason is? Why now?
Well, my thing is, as far as diplomacy is concerned, it never was really on the table. I think that what Prime Minister Netanyahu has said, this was planned months ago. That's what he said. So I think that President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu, decided a month ago or more that this is what they were going to do. Now, without telling anyone or having the reasons to be able to explain, but I think that, I know on President Trump's side, he thinks that he can do whatever he wants to do and take us into war after war. I mean, I think there's 6 or 7 times already where he's utilized the military. He acts like it's his toy, and then he talks about it. You know, he's at a ceremony honoring people, and he starts talking about curtains and him doing the, fixing the, I think it's gaudy what he's doing, the White House. Our young men and women, lives are on the line. The hardest vote for me since I've been in Washington, D.C., is to vote to decide whether or not our men and women should go into battle, not joke about it and talk about curtains. It's serious, but do you see how he plays with it and seemingly don't take it serious about the seriousness and the lives of the men and women in our military who, I might add, they're great. They do their job. They're focused on this country, and they will do whatever the commander-in-chief tells them to do. So I admire them. They deserve to know why we're in this war at this time. They deserve to know.
Did you hear any indication in the briefing from the secretaries whether they're willing or ready to put boots on the ground in Iran?
I'm not going to talk about anything specifically in that regards. Since we were in the class, I'm giving you what not what was said in there, but I'm telling you what I got out of it and what I feel as a result of not only what took place in there today, but what has taken place from the time that we've been in this war. Because I hear different rationales. It's regime change one day. It's because Israel was going to strike and then they were going to retaliate against us another day. It's because the president decided it just was time to go another day. It's because there was an imminent threat another day. Each day, sometimes twice a day, the rationale for doing this changes. That tells me it is not serious, and they're not talking straight to the American people on something that is life and death. And what the results are going to be. We had this battle, my Republican colleagues, all for the previous last 2 years on Afghanistan. We've been there for 20 years, and they talked about the death of individuals, of our soldiers, et cetera, and wanted to make sure that we went in depth and tried to blame everything on President Biden at the time. In fact, that's all he does now, is say Biden, Biden, Biden. This is his presidency. This is his war that he's created. And he's got to stand up, and he's going to be held accountable for it.
I'm going to add just a few comments. I'm Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury of the Oversight Committee, and I just want to directly respond to what the Speaker just said to the press, which is that Congress should stay out of it. My response is, Mr. Speaker, have you read the United States Constitution? Because the U.S. Constitution is clear that the power to declare war squarely sits with Congress. And it is very clear that this administration has not put forward a viable argument for why the U.S. should be declaring war on Iran and why it has deployed military resources without congressional authorization. So let me amplify a few things that Ranking Member Meeks has put forward. First of all, has this administration provided a viable legal theory of why we should be going to war with Iran? No. Has this administration put forward a credible piece of evidence as to why there was an imminent threat that meets a legal threshold for attacking Iran? No. Can they explain what their post-conflict plan is for rebuilding and stabilizing the region? No. Can they explain whether and how the breakdown in diplomatic efforts occurred? No. Can they explain why they hit a school full of school children and murdered over 100 school children? No. And can they explain how they plan to stop the loss of U.S. service members? No. In fact, as has already been stated publicly, they expect more deaths of American service members. So the American people need to be demanding that Congress pass this war powers resolution. This is Congress's square responsibility, and we are not going to allow this administration to continue to act illegally, unconstitutionally, and without the designated authority to do what it is doing. So thank you very much.
You can, I'm going to send an email. Just keep it up for 2 more minutes and send one more.
congressmen by their first names. Sorry.
I know Greg since he was in the damn. Listen, my ex-girlfriend. No, that's great.
I will be ready for
My ex-girlfriend's grandfather got him in December, and that's how far back. Yes, that's how far back we go. Yes, I'm going. Oh yes, sorry. Thank you for. Yeah, that's great.
I mean, that's my best friend.
Yeah, just I wanted to send a note on camera. Type it. Just keep bars up for a second.
Thanks.
Just give me 30 seconds.
What I do.
Bye, Roy.
Oh, this chart. Yeah, so it's gonna be busy. All right, I'll see you on Thursday.
All right, see you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Yep.
Have a good night, Kinsey.
See you later. See ya.
That was like 9 stickers in a row or something.
Right, can I trouble you all to
Yeah,
take your mics
I was
so I
telling
can?
him that.
Oh,
Like, he's like,
I'll grab mine. Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind returning the chairs to where you got them, appreciate it.